Krásný den! In this video I'm going to speak about common Czech. We will be focusing on adjectives as well. Last week I showed you how the Czech adjectives work, how the hard and soft adjectives change, and I also mentioned that that applies to the proper Czech. To be exact, to the standard Czech, spisovná čeština. And now it's time to take a look at an equally important version of Czech, which is the common Czech, obecná čeština. Jdeme na to! Ahoj, vítejte na mém kanále Czech by Zuzka, kde vám pomocí angličtiny vysvětluju českou gramatiku. First, let's do a quick review of the so-called hard adjectives. If you don't know what hard adjectives are, check the video from last week. I also want to emphasize that the changes in the common Czech apply only to the hard adjectives because, as you know, soft adjectives don't change with the gender, so there's no point for them to have a different version in common Czech. This time I wrote examples with the adjective velký, big or large. As you can see, I'm also using 4 categories: masculine gender, animate, inanimate, feminine and neuter, singular forms and plural forms. Velký pes, a big dog. Velký strom, a big or large tree, ending with Y. Velká knížka, a big book, ending with A and čárka. Velké okno, a large window, ending with an E. Now, what happens with plural? We have to be aware of this change here in standard Czech. Velcí psy. We have to write it with an I, but K changes to C. Velcí psy. Velké stromy. Velké stromy. Velké knížky. As you can see, these endings are the same. A velká okna. This is the standard Czech. Now, what is common Czech exactly? I sometimes say that it's colloquial Czech. It's the language that we use when we speak in informal situations. And it's also how most people speak in most of the Republic when it's not a formal situation. For writing, we prefer these forms. Also depends what kind of writing. But for speaking among family, friends, or people on the street, we use the common Czech. Now, how does that change? It only affects some forms. You've probably heard someone order velký pivo, large beer. We don't say velké pivo because it would sound too proper, unless that's your goal. You want to sound proper. So that's one of the changes. But also here, instead of velký, we say velké. Velké. So Y changes to A. Velký pes. Also for the inanimate, velký strom. What about the feminine? Nothing changes. It stays exactly the same. And velké okno changes to velký okno, just like velký pivo, černý pivo, etc. Velký okno. Okay, what about the plurals? They also change. Velcí psy is a little bit difficult, right? You have to think about the rules and the changes. But with the common Czech, we just use this lazy form, velký psy, velký psy. You don't have to worry about any change. And we use the same form here, velký stromy, velký stromy. Also here, velký knížky, and also here, velký okna, velký okna. So the plural here is y. So when you take a look at it here, it's actually easier, right? Common Czech is mostly spoken Czech, so it's something that developed over centuries and it was a simplified version of the standard language. So here, as you can see, people always find a way to go around the rules and make them a little bit easier. We have fewer forms to worry about when it comes to the adjectives in the common Czech. Before, it was used only with the commoners, with the villagers, and it was not seen in a very good light, but nowadays it's completely okay to use it in informal situations. Naturally, when I am with someone and I see a big dog and I want to say, oh, that's a big dog, I would say, tyjo, to je velký pes. To je velký pes. I would never say, to je velký pes, unless I need to be proper, like when I teach Czech. And now you might be asking, why do we teach standard Czech? They're both important. Like I said, it depends in what kind of situation you are. If you go to the pub or hang out with a lot of Czech people, sooner you will get used to these forms, these colloquial or common forms. You don't have to use them. When you're learning the language, you're not Czech, it is completely understandable that you don't use these forms. It will not look strange. If I went to the pub and I would be using the standard Czech, it would sound really strange. People might think that I'm arrogant, that I think that I'm more than everybody else. So it is good to know about both forms and use the standard forms, the proper forms, and understand that these ones are common forms and they're also correct, but not in every situation. So let's practice. Let's take another very common adjective, strašný, terrible. Let's use these forms that I wrote above. So let's say it's a terrible dog. To je strašný pes. To je strašný pes. That's a terrible tree. To je strašný strom. That's a terrible book. It doesn't change. To je strašná knížka. To je strašný okno. To je strašný okno. These are terrible dogs. To jsou strašní psy. To jsou strašný stromy. To jsou strašný knížky. To jsou strašný okna. Okay, one more adjective. What about divný? Divný is also really common. Strange. So how do you say that's a weird dog? To je divný pes. To je divný strom. To je divná knížka. To je divný okno. To jsou divní psy. To jsou divný stromy. To jsou divný knížky. To jsou divný okna. Excellent. These are the forms for the nominative. And also, most of them would be the same for the accusative case as well. If you're asking if this also changes in different cases, yes, it does. Accusative would be easy, because here you would say, viděl jsem velký psy. This form would stay the same. It would act as masculine inanimate. Or if you wanted to say, I have a big dog, you could say, mám velkýho psa. That would be the common Czech for the accusative in this particular form. And I will not get into this. I want to keep this video simple, mostly about the basic form, about the nominative. Now it's time to do an exercise. Here you can see 10 sentences. Some of them contain adjectives in common Czech and some of them in the standard Czech. Your task will be to identify those versions of common Czech, the new ones that I showed you today, and change them into the standard Czech. These sentences contain a nominative and accusative case. Pause the video if you need some time and we are going to check it right now. Číslo 1. Do obchodu přišla stará paní. Stará paní. There is not even a possibility to use common Czech here. So it's the only version for this form. Na schodech seděl hezký kluk. Hezký, A is a clear sign of common Czech. Velký, hezký. Číslo 3. Kde jsou ty zelený jabka? We actually have two forms. Ty, a pronoun. Ty zelený jabka. This is common Czech. Ty zelený jabka. If we want to use it in the standard Czech, it would be ta, also, ta zelená jabka. Číslo 4. Tohle jsou skvělé nápady. Skvělé nápady is this form and actually is standard Czech. Mám pro vás důležitý sdělení. Sdělení is Neuter, so it is common Czech, důležitý. And the proper form would be důležité sdělení. Číslo 6. Čekali na nás rozlobený rodiče. Rodiče is masculine animate. The standard Czech would be rozlobení rodiče. Číslo 7. To jsou docela drahý náušnice. Náušnice, feminine, drahý náušnice. The standard Czech is drahé náušnice. Mám strašný hlad. Strašný again. And the standard Czech is strašný hlad. Číslo 9. To bylo divný. To bylo divný. To is Neuter. So divný is common Czech. Standard Czech would be divné. To bylo divné. Every time we describe something and we say to, it would end with y in common Czech. And it's so common. To bylo dobrý, to je skvělý, to bylo divný. And the last one. Američtí vědci objevili nového dinosaura. Američtí. Standard Czech. And you can also know it's more complicated. It's standard Czech. The proper Czech. Okay, this is all from me. Let me know if you enjoy this particular topic and if you would like to learn about these adjectives in different cases maybe. Mějte se krásně. Ahoj!